Welcome to the Real Triathlon Podcast. I'm your host, Garrick Lowen, here with Nicholas Chase and Jackson Laundry. Welcome back to the Real Triathlon Podcast. Today it is myself and Jackson. Everyone I think is kind of winding down for the year, but there is still some epic racing going on. We have the grand final for the T100, which is in Dubai, and there's still 70.3 Worlds happening on happening on Christmas or something, sometime late in December.
December 12th or something like that. I can't
Yeah, it's
remember.
like mid December, but it's a long time from now. I guess everyone has to get all the way down there, so that's exciting. But so this weekend, obviously, you're listening to this. It is Thursday the 14th, and Dubai is in 2 days. So we are going
And a
to.
half because of how much of the time change, right? Like it's happening in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But it's gonna happen on the 16th somewhere. So that'll be exciting. We're gonna recap that a bit. But until now, Jack and I are, rolling back into training. This is our first week back. I think we should kind of talk about expectations when you're getting back into training after some downtime and where you should be at as you ramp back up. Jack and I are both planning earlier season races, and I think it's fair to say that neither of us are getting ahead of ourselves. So, Jack, how's the week been going? I guess you started back up, you say, on Monday or on the weekend?
On Sunday, I had my first training. Um, it's been going well. I'm just looking at my training peaks here. I've done 7.5 hours from Monday through Thursday. So, a little under 2 hours a day. Total is going to be around 12 hours for the week. So pretty light, but honestly, this is like if you were going to have the perfect lifestyle where for some reason you just have enough money to do this and you just train like 2 hours a day, do a little bit of meetings, do whatever you want, maybe try to do something productive for a bit, and then you're done for the day at like 5. That would be so nice. So this is like the golden hour of the year. Where you're training a little bit, you feel good, it's all easy, and you're just kind of resting, which is really what you should be doing. It's like active rest because you don't want to be completely off for like months and months, but you've had your off time and now you're kind of just moving your body but still chilling out. I think you've been doing even less than me this week. You've been doing like one workout a day.
Yeah, I've been doing just one workout a day. Like you said, man, this is like the perfect if you kind of just want to do this for fun, this is how you do it. You just want to stay in shape. One workout a day, either in the morning or after work. I've been working a bit more than when I'm in my training, but I've been enjoying it because you take the time off where you're not training at all and you're really enjoying it. And I feel like for us who race most of the months out of at least 8 months out of the year, we're racing. We're training pretty heavy most of the year, and we don't jump right back into training and smash it. To me, this still feels, I don't know, like a off season or like a preseason almost. And it's just really light, low pressure, uh, low, intensity. And it's just fun. It feels good to just move. Coda is not very excited about it, but um, yeah, you just move your body. It feels good. And it still kind of feels like off season to me. To me, I use this as like almost like building that hunger to get back into training because I feel like very restrained, very pulled back, very easygoing. And then you're like, okay, now I want more. Now I want more. Now I really want to push my body. And I find that I get like more and more hungry to up the frequency and then up the intensity and then up the volume. And I think that's just like a healthy way to do it because sometimes when you're grinding all season, it just feels like work the whole time and you lose some fun sometimes, and that's fine, that happens, and you need to be able to just push through that. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I like it.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums up exactly why I decided not to do New Zealand. Just because, yeah, it would be mentally it would be hard to push through another. It was going to be another like 6 weeks of training for New Zealand after Kona or something like that. Um, and I was like, man, I could do this, but then I'm working all the way into December. Then you get back, you have like a bit of an off season. Then you're trying to start racing again, probably in March. You need that time, I think, each year. And this is maybe something I haven't had quite enough of the last couple of years, is that little bit of like low pressure time in training where it's like, oh, you're just letting that hunger build for pushing, gradual build up to the season, and you're training less than what you feel like you want to. And that's a rare thing that you need to enjoy. And like mentally, I think it's really important when you get late into the next season and you kind of haven't been grinding, like crazy nonstop. Um, but yeah, I think that's a good spot to be in. I think a lot of people are in that spot, but not Tamara Jewett, who is racing T100 Dubai this weekend, which I think is going to be a good one. I think, it's everyone's there talking about how hot it is and surprisingly humid. Everybody kind of was like thinking, oh, this is going to be dry because it's like a desert, but apparently it's pretty humid too. So I think we're going to see some similar racing play out to what we saw in Singapore, where the guys and girls who are really good in the heat, pace themselves, kind of can maintain that strong run, are going to do really well. So yeah, we have notable DNS. We have Sam Laidlow pushed his run training too hard, he said, and got a hamstring tear. So he's out. Otherwise, you pretty much have all the main suspects on both the men's and women's side, especially the women's side. Did you say all of the top 9 in the world ranked are there?
Yeah, let's start with the women's race here. So the top 9 ranked in the series are all showing up to this race. The only person missing is whoever's ranked 10th. And I don't know who that is because I can't scroll out of this right now. But you have Taylor Knibb, Ashley Gentle, Inia Lee, Imogen Simmons, Laura Phillip, Kat Matthews, Lucy Byram, Paula Finley, Julie Duran, Flora Duffy, all in the top 10. And on the top 10 ranked, I guess, in this race. Flora Duffy ranked 11th, so whoever that 10th place person is missing. And then right behind them, you got Taylor Spivey and Tamara Jewett. Tamara is right there. She's knocking on the door of a top 10 in this series. She can this week, she rallied really well in Vegas, moved up nicely on the run, and if she can do that again on a tough course, she can definitely squeak it into that top 10 in the series. And we know Tamara is, when it comes to the races where the races just explode, she's so good at staying in it and just hunting everyone down. So if she can do that again, then I think she's in a good spot here. And I know from
Especially
speaking,
because this race has more points, right?
yeah, a lot more points. I know from speaking to her, like she's hungry. She's been disappointed with some of her races this year. It didn't go the way. She still had a really strong season. But this can really, cap it off and she can end the season being like, yeah, you know what? I had a good season. This was a good result. Top 10, got my contract for next year. I can then decide if I want to do this again. But yeah, she put herself in striking distance and in a good place.
Yeah, I think for sure if you look at 10th is 56 points, she's at 43, but if she can put together a good day, and I think top 5 is definitely doable for her. Even a top 3, like if she has that sort of, Oceanside 2023 type day, I think that's a top 3. So when you have the heat like this, things can just totally change on the run, even if she's, you know, pretty far down off of some of the top girls. That's what I think. Hopefully, I know she can run really, really well in the heat, and hopefully she's, had that as part of her plan in her preparations, and she's used to racing from the back, so that kind of plays itself well to the people who maybe don't make that front group. If it's part of their normal plan, then they just pace themselves evenly. Whereas some of these people who think they've got to be in the group and they push really hard early on, they might overheat, and that's going to be tough. So I think
Yeah.
Tamara's set up for a good day. Outside of that, who do you see? You've got the Taylor Nib, Ashley Gentle sort of battle that Taylor Nib has kind of been on the winning end of more often than not this year. So where do you think that's going to play out? Because the way I see it, when Taylor's on and she's got her good day, she's pretty much unbeatable. But with these conditions in the heat, this is where we've seen Ashley Gentle beating her in the past.
Yeah, this definitely seems like if Ashley's going to do it, it's going to be in these conditions on this day. Taylor's had a long season. Ashley seems like she's taken some time off and paced it to target this race. So we'll have to see. It depends on the gap that Taylor's had, but we have seen her falter in the heat before, where we haven't really seen Ashley falter in the heat or caused by the heat. She obviously did have a great day. Um, where was that? In Ibiza? So yeah, it could be there. Interesting that India Lee is still in third,
Yeah,
but
she's
she
just been consistent. Like
yeah.
she had that one great day, and then she has, let's see, an eighth and a third. She has another third in Ibiza. So yeah, I think she could have another. I mean, obviously Miami was probably pretty hot, and she raced well there. So maybe these conditions could work for her. She didn't finish in Singapore, so obviously that day the heat didn't work for her. But I don't remember what the reasons were. Perhaps it was mechanical. Um, so yeah, it's gonna be interesting as far as like podium. Like it's hard to bet against a lot of these women. Like Kat Matthews is so consistent. I feel like for once she hasn't actually raced for a little while. So that might mean she's going to come in firing and really, mix it up with a podium. Laura Phillip, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, she won world championship Ironman, so that can kind of go both ways, right? Like maybe she's been super kind of bogged down with commitments from media and sponsor negotiations and stuff from that massive win, and she hasn't been training too much, or maybe she's been super motivated and ready to crush this one. Can you imagine? Like she's fifth in the series right now. Imagine she like pulls off like a top three or four or even top five in the series, and she wins the Ironman World Championship in the same year. That's pretty crazy.
That would be quite the season. I think Kat's also having just a wild season right now too. If she can pull off a top five, man, that is money in the bank. Because she won. Did she win the Ironman
Oh yeah, I
series?
think she's like a shoe in to win the series.
Yeah.
And I mean, she could conceivably get as high as fourth. Like even, I mean, who knows? Even third in the T100 if she like gets a podium and India Lee kind of doesn't have a great day.
Yeah.
Because for points right now in the series, you have Taylor Knibb with 105, Ashley Gentle with 92, India Lee 74, Imogen Siddons 66, Laura Phillips 63, Kat Matthews 61, Byram and Finley both at 60, Darren at 56, and Lucy Charles at 56. That's the top 10. So she's only out of fourth. She's really close. And then third would be, but yeah, that would be money in the bank because you're 200 grand for winning the Ironman series. And how much for winning or top three in the PTO series is probably a pretty huge payday as well. So
Plus all the prize money she's won along the way.
yeah, she could have a getting close to a $500,000 just from races season,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think about.
So yeah, I mean, to be consistent, right? And to be consistently performing at the top. We've seen so many athletes kind of peak early in the year and not so much peter off, but other athletes start to peak and leapfrog them a bit. So it would be interesting to see like who shows up that performed really well early in the season, got their points, will perform again, or gonna start losing ground um, in this series. Obviously your early winners.
It's
So
worth so much.
India Lee won in Miami. That was way back in, was that February or March?
I think March was Miami. Yeah.
And then she came back with a third place in Ibiza, which was September. So we'll see what she can do because that would be cool. So 10th place, who's not on the list, is Lucy Charles. I guess she's injured again. Just too much racing for her,
Yeah, I
perhaps.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I forget what her. Here, let me check. I'm gonna do the old Instagram check. I remember seeing it, but now I forget. So she and Sam Laidlow would be the two big kind of missing
Yeah.
names.
And then once we get confirmation on that, let's move on to the men's race. And then maybe we discuss a bit, who's going to get contracts next year. Where that's going to go. I haven't heard anything about that or any talks. I did see that they are doing a race in Vancouver next year. So that's pretty cool. We're getting something back in Canada. That'll be what, the only pro triathlon race in Canada? Will be the PTO Vancouver.
Yeah, I think it is. And just as a follow up on the Lucy Charles, it looks like she's been diagnosed with as celiac. So she's trying to figure out that. That's what she's saying in terms of what she's focusing on her health, but she is
Huh.
going to be in
Okay.
Dubai to do commentating. So yeah, I mean, maybe she's been struggling with that and needs to just take care of that. But yeah, so the T100 next year. Or wait, should we talk about the men's race first?
Yeah, we're gonna jump over to the men's race. So we have the big hitters: Martin Van Riel, Magnus Ditlev, Kyle Smith, Sam Long still sitting in fifth in the series, and then Yuri's still sitting in sixth. We got Peter Hemrick, Mat- Matthias Margirier, Rico Bogan, Alistair Brownlee will be interesting to see what he does. I'm just waiting for him to. I don't think the conditions will play into his strengths too well, but I feel like he's so like close to getting back to being like at the front, but I'm sure he'll get a couple drafting penalties this race and it'll take him out. Uh, and then so that's the top 10 going into this race, or who are racing. So obviously Martin Van Riel is the guy right now. Yellow Gaines
Yeah, I
is
can't see him.
not in this race. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know, Magnus, man, had a great race in Kona. So it'll be interesting to see if he can turn it around to such a short distance. But I think we're gonna see Kyle Smith and Martin Van Riel go toe to toe.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Kyle's ready to just absolutely crush another one. I mean it's freaking hot, man. It so depends on how good you are in the heat. And if we look at his results, I mean he was fifth in Singapore, so that's pretty solid. He has a fifth, a second, and a second. So that was his worst of the three he's done. But it's still pretty solid. So I don't know. I would love to see Kyle really put together a great day and challenge for the win again. That was awesome to see him do that over in whatever California that was.
Yeah,
But I think he's maybe one of the guys who can challenge Van Riel. I think we're gonna see Sam have a pretty good race again. He's good in those hot races where he can just kind of do his thing and work his way through. Like he's one of the
yep,
few guys that I've seen who can perform really well in the heat and really well in the cold. Um, so he could. I mean, he's right there in fifth, and just to kind of give you guys an idea, Martin Van Riel has 98 points in the lead, but Ditlev in second has 79, then Kyle Smith 76, Sam Laidlow 75, Sam Long 74, Yuri Kulin 69, Hemrick 65, Newt 63, Marjorier 59, and Bogan 57. So you only have 5 points between second and fifth right now. So really, there's a pretty decent chance for any of those guys to end up in second place. I think. Um, Ditlev a bit in the driver's seat there. He's pretty consistent, Ditlev, and obviously he's good in the heat. He just crushed Kona, so he's probably
yeah,
gonna be the man to beat on for that second place. And Van Riel, I mean, he's all he has to do is basically finish, and he's gonna win. I think um, the series. But
yeah,
did
that's
you watch
wild. But
him
yeah,
in Allegheny in Vegas?
um, did I watch Yellow Geens in Vegas? Oh, I did watch that race. Yeah,
That was pretty crazy. Like it looked like Van Riel was down and out of it like 10 times. And then he just freaking fights back, and he ended up finally losing his first ever middle distance race that he's lost.
yeah. Just crazy, man. That was exciting the way they were running. It was just the way they were running the course, right? So really they were running the same pace just in different ways. And then but you knew Van Rio was just hanging on, like just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah. And then you
And
had where he got back in it kind of when Hele stopped to tie his shoe.
yeah,
Yeah. A couple other names on in here. Jason West hasn't really put together a great day. He definitely put together a good day in Vegas. He was fifth. He got it together, even though he had to stop and stretch out his back or something or his hip. He was still
yeah.
fifth. Maybe he's finally coming into form and he can run like so well even in hot conditions. So I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of puts one together and challenges for the podium. Um, or even the win. Like he's a guy. If he puts together the swim and bike, he can win. Do you know what the bike course is like?
I heard it's very technical.
Okay.
I'm not sure on like the elevation.
I don't think there's really anything there for elevation. Um,
Yeah, it would all be man-made if it was.
yeah, like overpasses and stuff.
Yeah,
That can be a big difference. Like the technical courses, suit some of the guys who are really good there and maybe not as much with the powerhouse type, Ditlevs or Laidlows or Sam Long type guys.
yeah. So
But a
it's
guy like
it is very technical, but there's very little elevation.
yeah. So it could
Yeah,
be. I'm not sure for Jason if he's like a super technically savvy guy or not, but the lower
yeah.
elevation might help for things to stick
I
together a
mean,
little bit more.
not well, there's 560 meters of elevation over the 100K.
The 80. Yeah. Uh,
Or sorry. Oh yeah, no, that's over the 100K. It says. So that includes the run
oh,
course
okay.
and the swim.
Yeah, swim probably didn't have much. Uh, so yeah, I mean that's I wouldn't call that flat, but it's certainly
No.
not, like a mountainous course at all. It'll be interesting to see when we wake up and see the results because at least the women's race is starting pretty much in the middle of the night for North America, but probably the men's then would be a little bit of a better viewing time. We can catch
Yeah.
some action in the morning, I think. But yeah, so for next year, contracts for this series, like, do you think they're going to change the way it is? Because it really looks like a lot of these guys kind of and girl, especially the women, didn't fulfill some of their contracts. Now, part of that is that there was one less race than what they had initially planned. So probably that would have made a big difference. But just looking at the race calendar and how the Ironman series has changed the way they're doing it with fewer races as part of the series, and they're pretty much all done pretty early in the year. I just don't think we're going to see people going for both series. You're going to see people racing in both series, but if they are, they're like focus on the Ironman series and maybe jumping into one or two T100s or the other way around. Um, I feel like more guys are going to go, okay, let's go T100, guaranteed contract, guaranteed money. And I'll do my 4 or 5 or whatever is needed for the series. And then I'll do like Ironman Worlds, 70.3 Worlds, maybe one other race kind of thing. What do you think people are going to decide to do? And that depends as well on what T100 decides for their requirements for the contracts as well.
Yeah, exactly. It depends how they like the timing and how they pay out the money for the contracts, I think will be indicative of how people decide to race it and then who gets picked too. I know there's some guys who really committed to the series and are doing really well. And there's some guys and girls who kind of are just doing this as a side thing for the guaranteed money and maybe they've pulled out of races on purpose or what. And I think the PTO knows that and they see that and they're discussing on what to do there. Um, but also like who's gonna get a contract too, right? Like those who might have abused it this year, are they gonna get contracts again? Is everyone in the top 10 going to be guaranteed a contract? Do you think maybe there's going to be more than 20 spots next year? That's all, stuff that kind of wondering. But like, there's guys who were in this series that didn't feature at all in the races, and are they going to
Yeah.
want to like our sponsors to them, not because they're bad athletes, but just because it's such a stacked field that if you're 1 or 2% off in one of the disciplines, you're constantly finishing 15th to 10th or 20th to 10th or something, and you don't feature at all, and your sponsors might be a little disappointed with the coverage that you've gotten throughout the year. So do they take a contract again, or do they, if they get it offered, or do they decide, you know what, not for me. The guaranteed money is nice for like this, but I really want to pursue something else. Some guys might not have had fun traveling around the world for this, and just racing the same guys over in very similar courses and stuff like that. I don't know. I've heard some athletes say they haven't enjoyed racing on the series.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to see because it's hard to predict, right? Like look at someone like Max Newman. He's only done 2 races. He was contracted. I mean, he's probably been injured. He always seems to only put together 1 or 2 races a year, really. Um, Bradley Weiss, he's done a bunch of races. He just hasn't really been able to put it together at the distance. I think that's partly where the the way they selected the athletes for this year is not happening next year. Like next year, they're gonna allow for a little bit more of their own discretion. But someone like Brad Weiss always gets his best results in a full distance. Um, so I feel like even if he's ranked in a position where he could take it, he probably would want to focus on the Ironman series, and he's doing well in the Ironman series too. Like he could be top 5 in the Ironman series, even though he's done 4 races, hasn't finished 2 of them. But this will be his 5th race in the T100, so he fulfilled it, and he did what he had to do. Yeah, Ben Canute hasn't really had a good day. Same as Brad Weiss. He's only done 4. He's done 4 races DNF2. So yeah, we'll see. And things are gonna change with with this finale. Like a couple guys and girls who just haven't really had great days are just gonna nail it. I know it. And then that might change everything in terms of whether they get a contract for next year. So interesting to see how that goes. Um, yeah, that's pretty much that. I mean, that's the racing. We got Nick coming into an interview with one of his athletes. So age grouper side, who what he just do his first half Ironman.
One of Nick's athletes who, yeah, just finished his first 70.3, but the mindset in which he does it is just incredibly like motivational. They're going to go into all that kind of detail. Um, and it's going to be something that, everyone can take something from, whether you're a professional athlete or an age group athlete, on your perspective of the sport. I think sometimes we get, like we were talking about before, you get bogged down and it becomes a bit more of a job, but we do this for fun, man. Like, this is fun. We're having fun. At least that's why I do it. So I I mean, you see me race Ironmans. I've always got a smile on my face because that's what I love to do. And we can't lose that perspective. I know we have goals and stuff, and Jack's got to make a living, but it's
Yeah,
it's good to be smiling.
I like that. I do like listening to sort of like someone who's just doing it because they love it, and that's a perspective that I think we all lose sometimes. Need to be reminded of. Like, hey, this is fun. Let's do it. Let's see how I can do, and not put pressure on myself. And especially when you're an age group athlete, like you don't need to have all this pressure on yourself. This is just about self improvement, and sort of sometimes arbitrary numbers, goals, and stuff like that can get in the way. And um, you know, I think this fellow really seems to have got that mindset down. So we'll jump into that either right now.
Welcome back, as promised, from the pre-show with Jackson and Garrick. I'm doing something a little different today. I'm bringing on an athlete whom none of you ever met and none of you may ever meet, but I hope you get to. Bobby, thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me. I decided to bring my friends with me today as well, and it's an honor to be chatting with you today. Honestly,
Well, the honor is it just goes both ways because I meet and work with and have conversations about this sport every day, all day. Like this is my life. And to have somebody that I work with and get to coach and help their journey. And this is, we'll give you some backstory and we'll kind of jump into it, but you've really made a profound difference on how I'm thinking about my race in Cozumel in the next week, just because it's been a long season, et cetera. But you'll all understand why. But Bobby, you were referred to me through a friend. And she, unfortunately, she didn't stick around as much, but you're here, man. And you just did you hired me to coach you to your first Ironman 70.3. Now let's go through that. What was your background prior? Why did you do this crazy thing? And how was the support and how did you navigate all that shit? Cause it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, I'm a total amateur with all these things. So I work a full-time job. The person that referred me to you, we're both accountants. We work for an accounting firm, so we're just kind of living in Excel spreadsheets all day long. And my background is been it's been a road to today. I think in my life, I've had some really bad self-destructive tendencies in my life, whether it be through alcohol or substances, and kind of gone through the roller coaster throughout the years. And I'm 35 years old now, and I remember about 5 years ago in COVID, I was in a really particularly rough patch where I, lost my job. And there's a kind of similar stories to what a lot of other people have experienced. And I decided to kind of shift a lot of that energy that I was funneling into the things that were destroying me, and I decided to go buy a pair of running shoes instead. And now I since growing up, I ran here and there. I was, I tried to stay active. I have gone on treks but I've never described or thought of myself as an athlete. And just through sheer necessity during COVID, I started to go running. And in the running, the more that I ran, I realized the less that I was having a drink, or less that I was doing the things that were destroying me. And over the years, I ran further and further. And all of a sudden I realized I could do a half marathon, and then I ran a full marathon, and then I ran 5 marathons. And for any of your listeners out there, I'm like, a 3-hour, 45-minute marathon is like a fantastic time for me. So I'm not breaking any records out there. I'm just out there having a great time with it. And I recently, in my last marathon earlier this year, I really burnt out on the training and decided I wanted to go to what I thought was the next level. And I thought maybe I would go and jump into a full Ironman right off the bat. But some more wise voices, aka you, Nick, decided maybe let's start you out with the 70.3 first. And that was where we got introduced. My colleague Debbie that we worked with, she introduced us, and that was the beginning of the story.
How did you find out about triathlons and where, and obviously I know your background a little bit more, but for listeners, how did this come on your doorstep and what was enticing about it?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Houston, and growing up, we used to go up every year. There's the Ironman in the Woodlands, and I have some family that live up there, and every year we'd go out there and watch these. We'd stand there and like, these are crazy people. Like, what are they doing? These are absolutely insane people. We would go up and watch the crazy people compete in these Ironmans, and it was just such a mind-boggling distance for me at the time. And so that was really my first interaction with long distance triathlons. But here in Austin, where I live currently, there are some local triathlons that are here. My partner Heather and I, we did the CapTex triathlon last year just for fun. And I think a lot of it was just us looking for more variety in our workouts, more variety in the way that we engaged with cardio and exercise. And I found that just running by itself was leaving me really not winded. I would say mostly more sore than it really needed to be over time. Like, only running over and over and over again and not doing much else really left me feeling like I wasn't really making my experiences to the full of its, like, my full potential. So I really thought the triathlons were going to be great because you get the swimming aspect of it and the biking aspect of it, which were a little bit lighter on the body. And my partner and my girlfriend Heather is a long distance cyclist as well. So she's done a bunch of centuries. I was a long distance runner. And so we thought, let's combine our two joys and go after it together.
So you had the motivation, you had the willpower, you knew that you like doing things that are challenging. That, I think there's probably been 10 or 15 athletes I've worked with who have used, I wouldn't say used, but have found this level of adventure, and it's helped curb addiction, or it's been another type of addiction that's actually healthy. I mean, I'm addicted, and if I wasn't doing this, who knows what I'd be doing back in some crazy meth house or something. You never know where you'd end up being if you weren't doing this sport. So you found that out, and were you scared of swimming? Most people have no effing clue about the swim. How did you wrap your mind around that part?
It's interesting. I am more afraid of swimming. I would more rather be under the water. I'm a certified diver, so I've been diving. I've gone diving a whole bunch in my life. So I'm less afraid of being under the water than I was on swimming on top of the water. There was a lot of nervousness of trying to understand. Sorry for the dog barking.
Oh, it's okay.
Trying.
We have that on the podcast all the time.
What I was fearful of was the inability to get the form down in a way that would make me in any way competitive in the swim. And when I mean competitive, it's like having somewhat of a respectable time, like in the 70.3, like 45 minutes. In my opinion, is respectable. I'm sure a lot of your athletes are thinking that's pretty slow, but for me, it was mostly about not totally falling flat on my face and just having an opportunity to go out there and not kind of overdo it with myself. There was also that worry of the initial jump into the water. I was worried about having a lot of other swimmers in the water around me, a lot of people pushing and grabbing and kicking, and that initial jump was something that I was worried about. But on race day, it wasn't a problem at all. The swimming was something that made me a lot of nervous. I was very nervous about. And for me, really, it was clear just based on how I got better at running. It was just spending time in the pool every day or every other day and really getting those miles in.
And it is tough, likely going, from a pure background of having running shoes and that's all you need to do your athletic endeavors. And then I'm like, all right, you need to go buy this, 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 and this. And then, by the way, look into this, think about that. I need you to have this so you can tell me that. Like, I'm just throwing all this gear at you. And so the investment of product is quite heavy in this sport. And showing up to this pool for the first few times, you're like, well, here I am half naked in front of a bunch of people. They're going to probably think I'm drowning. Like, I obviously have been doing this for quite a while. I don't have to worry about that anymore, but how did you manage the expectations of others? Cause you probably were like, people might think I'm a NARP out here, an unathletic regular person.
It's an interesting question. Going back to the gear, I remember on our first call together, Nick, and you're giving me a list of all the things that I need to buy. And I still have that list in front of me. Every single thing that you were mentioning to me, I was Googling it while you were saying it because I had no idea what you were talking about. Like, what the hell do I need paddles for while I'm swimming? You use your hands for swimming. Why would I need a buoy to keep me up in the water? You swim on why would you need a buoy? And I had no idea what I was doing with any of that stuff. And so it was definitely starting from absolute scratch. Luckily in my life, I have embarrassed myself enough in my physical endeavors that at some point you stop caring. It doesn't matter what other people are looking at, how they see me. And so I knew that really the hardest part of starting anything new is the first time. It's the first time that you get out there and you put your blinders on and you ignore the world around you. And I remember I had a workout in my phone in Training Peaks that you had given me. I had no idea what any of the words meant in that. All I knew is that I saw a distance in there that you wanted to swim, and I was determined to go and make that happen. I was determined that no matter what, I probably couldn't do what you wanted me to do with like a backstroke. I don't even know if I even could do a backstroke today, but I was going to get in that pool and go do that distance no matter what, because that is what felt right to me. And I remember that first time I was in a 25-yard pool at my local YMCA. While I was in there the first time, half of the pool was taken up by a group of elderly people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s doing water aerobics. And there were kids learning to swim in the other lane next to me. And I was just in there with my poofy swim shorts that I use for beach wear. And I was swimming there back and forth. And I remember doing 50 yards and looking at my watch being like, oh, how much was that? Okay, that was 50 and I need to do 2,000.
Absolutely.
And I realized, and I think it was at that moment that I realized the task that was in front of me. And I shouldn't have been surprised that it obviously was going to be very similar to how I experienced running for the first time, which was running and, going as far as I could without stopping and looking at my watch and realizing I'd run a quarter mile. And that was as far as I could do in that moment. And it's at that moment that you truly see the task that was in front of you. Thankfully, I had plenty of time. This was July and my race was not until November. So I knew I had a lot of time to get up to speed for it. But then at that moment was when I truly realized, and it sunk in what was going to be required of me to get to the point where I could be competitive.
As anecdotal as all that is, it's what we all go through on those circumstances. We were like, well, this is just going to be what it is. And wow, I had no idea it was going to be this much. And your mind is having a hard time following what your body needs to do. And that's part of this growth process. That's why I really love to just kind of jump into the deep end, give you a lot of things to think about all at once. And then what we do is we have good dialogue afterwards and we learn. We're always addressing situations, learning, solving problems. And I think the problem solving nature of this sport really lends itself to a lot of happiness, because the better problems we start to solve during this process, the more fulfilled, the more progress. And throughout this process, having somebody in your ear, or we even had one of our other coaches work with you on deck to kind of give you some pointers. And I think that's really what this turns into over time, is like, oh, now I'm crawling, now I'm walking, and now I'm jogging. And that's really what you went through in, what was it? It wasn't even 6 months, 5 months, something like that.
5 months. Yeah. 5 months. Yeah.
So you did a lot in a very small amount of time, all the way up to a 70.3. Now your run background helped me confidently know, like, all right, no matter what, we can lean into the running. And then the biking. So what was your bike background story? How did you have one? Did you know anything about it?
I had a bike because of my girlfriend. She required me to have a bike in our relationship because we live in Austin and she will bike everywhere around town. I was never a cyclist very much growing up. To be honest, I thought the idea of having so much gear and so mmany things that you had to clean and maintain was such a turnoff for me initially, because what was so beautiful and simple about running for me, and why I loved that with my initial passion, was that wherever I go and whatever I did, all I needed was a pair of running shoes. With a bike, all of a sudden, all these different pieces are things that you also need to think about as well. It's kind of similar to swimming in that way, but swimming is more about the form and all of that. And a lot of that kind of translates to a lot of things you need to think about on the bike. So I did have a bike. I did not have clips on the bike. I had flat pedals. I did not have tri-bars. It was a bike that I bought at a used bike shop for $500. It had probably crashed a few times, and I used it exclusively just to ride around town and go to bars and have a good time. And that was my extent of my really cycling experience up to now. That also was definitely a learning curve. I ended up buying a bike later down the road, one for the race, and in that process, I got a professional bike fit. And during that, I realized that the bike that I had been riding was actually 2 sizes too small for me as well. So when I first started training for this, the biking for me was on too small of a bike on flat pedals. And it was also a very steep learning curve.
I think that's probably another reason why, like, we're geographically separated. I can't kind of roll through all this with you. We've set pictures and stuff like that, but deep down, like, I don't really have the vast understanding of this bike and what it's been through and how it fits you, and didn't get to see your ride in person. So you were doing a lot of the work on your own. And I applaud you for that, because you didn't quit. You didn't get disrupted. You didn't get really, I mean, I'm sure there's discouragement around every corner, but you didn't let it defeat you. And you really stuck to it. And I think the nature of how you handle this and approach it is really, really great. It's why I think this sport is so great, because it's a challenge. It's growth, man. I mean, now you've got a beautiful bike. You know how to maintain it. You and Heather can go on some longer rides together. You're fit enough to understand, like, you're versatile on the bars. You had a little bit of a go down once, and then you got back on the horse. So what was the steepest learning curve on the biking? I'd say while the workouts were coming, and as I was trying to instruct you on how to gauge efforts and put out power, etc.
Yeah, I think it was not. It was the accumulation of all of it. Like the cycling along with the swimming learning curve was initially such a huge steep curve to have to overcome as well, and also have to figure out how to fit it into a work life that in my job with in business development with this accounting firm, my days sometimes end up being 10, 12 hours. So I'm up at 5 a.m. I'm out at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. sometimes writing and doing these things. And so I found the volume of the cycling to be the biggest hurdle initially, and realizing that what I can get out of an hour long run and can leave me clear headed and ready to go for the next day, it would take me 3 hours on the bike to kind of get that same clear headedness. But I do think, and one thing that I've learned throughout all of this, and I think it differs for everybody, but there is I truly believe, Nick, I truly believe that there is enlightenment in there. I believe there is enlightenment in the process. I believe that in whatever you do, and for other people, for various people out there, some people it's triathlons, some people it may be knitting, some people it may be baking, but in whatever you are passionate about, there is enlightenment in the process itself. And so, yes, while that initial lift to try to figure out how do I swim right, how do I go for the right rides, how do I get the miles in and build it into my schedule, once you figure that out, and once you figure out how to make that and build that into your life, then the process itself is what creates that space in your mind for greatness in many ways. And greatness for everybody, I think, varies, right? Greatness for me in my life meant showing up to my job every day, successful, creating opportunities for those that are around me, being present in my relationship, being present for my pets that are here, being present for my family, and the triathlon world, while it did eat up those hours, it created the headspace that I needed to be able to pursue everything else in the right mindset.
I think that's transformative, and that's prolific for the sport to be able to not just be a better professional, but to use the tools and sharpening those tools during those early hours, and then showing up to work and just knowing like, I already swam an hour today, or like I already biked, and now I just get to look forward to having a nice jog later in the evening, enjoying some dinner, just having some feet up, because you've accomplished so much. I think those boxes we get to check off are a little bit bigger with those big checks or stamps that make us feel pretty good. It's great that you embraced it. I have some clients I work with, and it's tough for them. They feel a lot of guilt. They feel a lot of hardship taking time away from others to give to themselves. And I feel like if you can't do that, sometimes you sacrifice way more on the back end because you don't get to enjoy that headspace and have the clarity and bring in that positive energy, even though you are taking some time for yourself. Did any of that kind of resonate with you, or did you have any influx with, man, I'm being a little selfish?
I thought about that quite a bit. And I do think at times there can be some selfish aspects to this type of training, especially when you're doing it in isolation, like I was. Like I didn't run in a group, or Heather and I would go on occasional bike rides, but we never did it, and quite often. I think though that what I found to be true was that clear communication up front was the most important piece of making it a successful part of our lives, and that I knew that I wanted to go pursue this. I got an initial sense from you of what were going to be the hourly involvements for me on a weekly, monthly basis in order to go pursue this. And before I did anything, I sat Heather down and said, here's what I want to do. Can you buy into this? I know it's going to take me away from A, B, and C, but would you agree to this? And she and I both in our relationships have always encouraged each other to have the opportunity to pursue our goals. And she knew that was a goal that I wanted to pursue. And she not only said yes, but she opened up the doorway for me. And in our world here in our house, the dog needs to walk twice a day. The chores need doing, just like everybody else. And she took on a greater share of those, so I could go and pursue those because there was that open level of transparency. So yes, well, I think like occasionally, and especially towards the late end near the race where you're taking 4 or 5 hours in a Saturday and Sunday to go train, there is some selfish aspects to it. I do think as a whole, though, it actually created our partnership to be much stronger than it was before, because we were, instead of us trying to fight against it, we were working together to solve the problem.
That's great. I think today someone made a comment to me just because we were talking about Ironman World Championship and how much families have to sacrifice for somebody to get to that point, not just to complete one per year or however many it is, but to get multiple races per year and then go to a world championship across the world. Or like the demand just continues. And I think it's good to find that healthy space for your partnerships and for your family dynamics that can not just totally ruin them. I mean, unfortunately, I have seen relationships end because of this sport, but it's usually because there's a lot of lack of communication. And you did it right. I mean, you set the bar. You had a partner who understands. She's obviously taking fitness seriously, and I'm sure she was like, "Wow, these changes you're going through. I mean, you're losing some pounds, but you're putting on some muscle. Maybe you're staying a little bit chiseled." I mean, she's probably enjoying a little bit of the fruits of your labor.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, and I've always been skinny as a rail, especially as a runner in my upper body. And so going to the gym and swimming, and all of a sudden I've got some weight up top. I think she was definitely enjoying a lot of that. A lot of that for sure. I have so much respect for those people that, and for Heather and for saying yes to this. It was something for us that is so important in our relationship for us to feel like we can go and pursue those goals. But yeah, she was definitely feeling like, it was also benefiting her in some ways. And I don't know about you, Nick, but I would say if you know runners like I do, if I didn't go, if before I even took on triathlons, if there was 3 days in a row where I had missed my runs and I'd just gone running, she would have kicked my ass out of the house to go do it because I was driving her nuts. Because if I don't go get what I need out there and put my miles in, I become like the gremlin version of myself, like I
Yeah.
foggy headed. I don't know what I'm doing. It really like the miles themselves are really the foundational part of happiness. And I'm sure you can, relate to that in some ways, but obviously there's a lot of things that create that happiness, but just getting those miles in, if I didn't go do that, she would push me out of the house to go do it because I was driving her nuts.
Well, I've been in the process of making some kind of punny or fun shirts for kind of like our RTS brand, and more miles, more smiles was one of them I was going to start putting on there because we all like have a higher sense of gratitude once we get those mileage numbers up there. Not that that hasn't probably been said or done before, but anyways, I think that aspect is why you took it on so well. Like, and you didn't quit. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I know I'm hammering him with all this like unknowns, but at least I know that man loves running. And when he puts on his shoes, he's probably like, finally a 13-mile run. I can do that. I'm going to go chill out and have a great time. So I'm so glad you came to us with a lot of background and love for running.
I have to ask you though, Nick, when we spoke for the first time, what did you think in your mind initially with the probability that I got all the way to there?
I had no doubt, Bobby. Trust me, I don't enter any of these partnerships. And honestly, like the folks who end up coming to me, who gravitate towards my life and being part of it, they are always here for a reason. And I never have ever doubted anybody who comes to me is being able to do it, except for last week. There's a gentleman who the only reason I say this is because there's been like 2 or 3 weeks where he was supposed to do something. And then like 3 weeks later, he's like, oh yeah, here's all this. I was supposed to go do this. And so it's like I'm not sure he's going to make it. So we may not even just start, but for you, I knew, like, I could just tell you were in it. You were asking the right questions. You were, okay, well, tell me what I got to go get. And what does this mean? How do I feel about this? Like, you were just really intuitive and inquisitive. And those questions really fire me up because I want to give you more. I want to feed that fire of questions and making sure you understand what the hell you're doing with all this time and money that you're putting into this sport. And you even had some trips, you had some events to go to, you had some retreats with your partner, and you kind of took some time to make it, life still special. It wasn't all dedicated. And I think we probably had you between 9 and 15 hours of training. And so it was really, I think, pretty manageable. You probably were doing at least half of that with running. So it wasn't a whole lot more. And again, the chores add up, I know, but luckily you had a great partner to help you.
Yeah, that's right. And that's not to say it was easy throughout the whole process. And I think for most of us too, I think as you're going through this, and this is with any sport really, is the process is when you step away from it and you look at it from the top down and look at it from today and looking at it the past, it looks like a beautiful thing. It looks like a beautiful thing because you can see, you can remember the progressions and where you got to, but in the moment, it's hard. It's hard. Those days that you have where you have an argument with your girlfriend or you have a really bad day at work, and I'm staring down the barrel of a 4,000-yard swim that I know I'm only going to get about halfway through, or you've got just so much on your plate, and just trying to fill all that in can be such a challenge. And one of the things that I loved working with you, Nick, is that sense of discipline that you instill, and that yes, while I have and I can create so much joy in the process itself, and that's part of it. Previously, if I wasn't feeling that, or if I wasn't feeling that joy, I just wouldn't do it. Just wouldn't do it. But that's not going to fly in an environment where the distance is that much more, and it's such a leap from what I was currently doing. I knew that if I took that mentality and applied it to a 70.3, I wasn't going to feel like I could probably finish the race, but I wasn't going to feel like I was racing. It wasn't going to feel like I was in the moment and like truly able to capture what my body could do in that moment. So in that process, I even now I can think back of moments where the last thing that I wanted to do was get up and go to the gym or go to get in the pool, especially at times getting in the pool. And you remember there were times where I really communicated some frustration with that experience.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing I remember you told me, and it was kind of in a it's kind of in a fatherly way too. Kind of like get in that pool. You get in that pool now kind of mentality. And I did. And I remember as I stuck through that and a couple weeks later, I remember I kind of came out of that tunnel of hatred of the pool and I was loving it again. I I finally unlocked something in that process where I felt like I was finally gliding in the water and I was starting to hit my time numbers like I wanted to. I was starting to hit my heart rate numbers like I wanted to. And from then on out, it became easy. So instead of me feeling like I was gassed after a 200 or 400 yard swim in the pool, all of a sudden I could do 1,000 yards without swimming, 2,000 yards without swimming, and the time just started to melt away from it. And I realized that in that moment, it was only possible. That was only possible because I had stuck through those challenging moments and just kept pushing through it and just forced myself to just turn my brain off and get in the water.
That's the best part about the pool is you can't check your phone. You can't have somebody yelling at you or asking you for something. It is the noise canceling headphones that you just cannot escape. And it allows, and that's what I just did today. I had like a nice 3,000 meter relaxing swim, and I didn't have really much to think about besides anything my brain wanted to go to. I found some flow, and ultimately, those are what I mean. I'm really glad you found that because it's tough to let go, and when we're not really good at something straight away, we do question, we fight it. If we're not even 50% good, then it's tough to find gratification. You just feel like you're always sliding down an oil slick slope. So it was important that you also found some outdoor swimming. Luckily, Barton Springs is right there in Austin. You were able to kind of get some sunshine, some good weather, people surrounding you. You weren't solo in those moments. And I remember swimming there deep eddies, just really loving the outdoor environment in Austin. So you obviously your training environment was a big part of it too. Like you've got Lake Austin right there. You've got great roads to go outside if you ever want to. And I think that really helps cultivate a good mindset too.
Absolutely. And I think it became easier over time because if you're training in Austin, Texas in July and August, it can be a nightmare of planning. It can be a nightmare of coordination about, there were Saturdays where I was up for a long ride at 4 in the morning because I knew as soon as the sun hit the horizon, it was game over. I needed to be inside at that moment because as soon as the sun hit the horizon, then it was going to be 100 degrees. And so it was challenging then, but you kind of come out on the other side of that now, where as soon as you get into October and November and the weather starts to cool off and then it becomes something truly beautiful. But we are blessed here in Austin for sure to have that variety of Barton Springs and Deep Eddy, like you mentioned. And we have a really great bike friendly town where you can, the town over out west has these beautiful hills that you can really challenge yourself at times. Going out east, it can be relatively flat, where if you're just looking to put in a bunch of miles at top speed, you can do that as well. And the running trails here, the Ladybird Lake Loop is kind of a running mecca here. Every Saturday and Sunday, you go down there, and there are hundreds of thousands of people out there. And it's funny when you start running. When I started running every Sunday like I did at the same time, I started seeing the same people over and over and over again on those races. And what motivates me more than anything, Nick, I got to tell you, there's a few gentlemen that I knew live around my neighborhood that are in their late 70s and early 80s. And they go out there and every Sunday they run the entire Ladybird Loop, which is 11.5 miles. And I would see them out there and, obviously they're not sprinting, they're not running fast, but they're out there with a smile on their face. And I remember running by them and every day I would say hi to them and wish them the best. And, despite that, I don't even know their names even now, but I still count them as my brothers because we're out there together in the pursuit of the same thing. And the pursuit of the same thing was just a love and a joy of movement and understanding that is is one of the foundational principles I believe as a human being to happiness is that movement.
Couldn't have said it better myself, buddy. Moving into the race, you signed up for, and I was really actually excited you didn't sign up for some Ironman event or have that kind of like corporate experience. Not that it's bad, but I really loved the smaller race, the grassroots feeling, and you did Oil Man, which it's a beautiful lake, and the environment around the course, and from the pictures I looked at, they look amazing. I mean, so I guess transitioning all that, you've built the fortress, you've armed it up, you've put some really smart people in there to manage all the assets, and now you're ready to take on the war. The war is the race. And I think my overall approach is to always make training a percentage harder than what we're going to experience on race day, because putting it all together in one day, and you were adamant about this, by the way, you were one of the most forward thinking athletes I've worked with in many years. And, 3 to 4 weeks out from the race, or even maybe it was 7, 8 weeks out, you were thinking, well, I want to put this all together. I want to do a big swim, bike, run day. And that was music to my ears, because I wanted you to have to feel the hours and, oh man, I just finished this, but I'm not done. And then I just finished this, I'm still not done. And I'm still going to have to fuel and change clothes and go through the motions of finishing this long day. And I was really happy you decided to do that. Did those confidence building days really give you a lot to look forward to on race day?
Yeah, they did. And yes and no. In some ways, they actually made my body feel like I'd already accomplished the race because I'd already put all three together in one day. So I remember the first time that I put all three together in one day, the next day I felt really disappointed. I was like, oh, well, that's over now. I guess I still have to do the race in a few weeks, but it kind of tricked my body to thinking that the race was already done in some ways. But the positives far outweighed any of those, weird negative feelings that I had. And the worry was, yes, can I sustain it over this amount of time? Have I put in enough work to feel not just like I can go do the miles, but can I really push the limit of those miles and really push myself to my fullest abilities and feel like I am an athlete? I think that's always been something for me that, I don't even know if I would, I guess all of this is just kind of a pursuit to ask myself if I consider myself an athlete, and do I feel like an athlete in that process? And the answer was resoundingly yes. The first time that I did that, I did the swim in a pool, which felt a little unusual. It was kind of swimming back and forth as quick as I could. And I remember the lifeguards, when I got out of the pool, especially after swimming for that hard, they were like, "Dude, are you okay? Like, are you mad about something? Are you okay?" You were like,
"Do you eat a sandwich?"
That was really intense. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. And then I remember I went from that pool to go ride, and then I kind of just was running like up and down and up and down. It was really boring on a cycling day, kind of up and down a trail that I ride nearby. And then I kind of got off the bike and ran the same trail back and forth. And so it was a little dry from like it being interesting, but I knew I needed to have like a fairly contained environment to be able to truly at least try it out for the first time. One thing that was clear for me though, just, thankfully with my background though, is that regardless of how much I had swam or bike, that I always had legs to run in at the end of the day, and I could always explode off the block at the end. So having that comfort that no matter what, that even if the swim went poor or the bike went bad, no matter what, as soon as I got off that bike, I was going to be ready to explode into the run.
That's perfect. There's a funny sequence of videos that are going around with the Formula One driver, Valtteri Bottas. And he's like a big gravel cyclist, and he's really witty and funny. He's Australian. And there's a reel when he's just in bed and you just see his face, and they're like, "What time is it?" And then they rip off the cover and he's like, "I'm going to do an Ironman." And so he swims an Ironman distance in his pool. I don't know the distance of the pool, but the video is good. And then he bikes on a Peloton, and then he runs on this curve treadmill, and he's got Jan Frodeno on his FaceTime. And I was just so impressed, how people just try to attack this in their own way. And it's perfect. I love it that he did it. And then it made me think of you, because I was like, well, you just wanted to go do a big triathlon and just feel what it's like and just put it all together. And so that was really helpful. And it was very assertive towards what you did on race day, which was truly enjoy an experience. And you got involved with the athletes around you. I'm sure your energy was palpable. So walk me through some of, you don't have to go super, super detailed, but I'd love to hear about nerves or anxiousness or positives, negatives? What was race morning and maybe even the night before? How did all that go through until the end of the race?
Yeah, yeah. It was interesting. I always got jitters ahead of my marathons because I knew that distance is really tough. I think even for the best athletes, a full distance marathon is so
Hmm.
tough. But coming into this, I didn't have any jitters because I knew that I had prepared as best as my abilities. And regardless of how it went the next day, the hay was in the barn. I was ready to go. I had all the gear that I needed, and I remember I previously for before a marathon, I always struggled to sleep that night. I was asleep by 7 p.m. the night before the race. I was out like a light. I was reading a book and I remember it fell on my face because I was out, and I was actually really rested the night before. I woke up, my alarm went off at 3:30 in the morning, and I had all of my stuff was like ready to go, and I just exploded out of bed. I put my headphones in. I have a playlist that really psychs me up, and I just remember getting to the race day and getting there and seeing all the other athletes and seeing the smiles on their faces too, like seeing the joy in their face, seeing them respond to my compliment of their bike. Like how many cool tri bikes were out there. And to be honest, I'm just still scratching the surface of how like the cycling world, and some of them have these crazy tires, or it looks like the whole bike is there's no gaps in the bike. It looks like a strong wind would just blow them over, and like so I'm going up to these guys. I'm like, man, that's such a cool bike, and just nerding out with them about this kind of stuff. And I know I'm still a novice with a lot of these things, but the people that do these things, they all have a why, and it's so fun to like figure out what that is when you meet these people. So the race was small. It was 250 people total, I think was the total race. I ended up finishing, I think, 89th out of that. So
That's
it
still
was
great.
pretty good. I was happy with that
Yeah.
finish. But I just remember even as soon as we got into the swim and we started the swim, and I remember getting out there into the water, and what I was worried about was getting out there and being in a crowd of people, and all of a sudden my panic sets in. And I think that's happened to some people before in that moment where you got a lot of people around you
Oh
grabbing,
yeah.
you
That
know,
is the biggest problem with this sport is swim anxiety or swimming induced anxiety.
Yeah, and I remember, and luckily for this race, they did a staggered start, and it's a small race. There's not people rushing right off the bat to get in the water. But I remember I got maybe 50 yards out of the water, and a swimmer came up behind me, and he kind of grabbed my leg, and I immediately had like a jolt, and I kind of stick my head up, and I look back, and the guy had this huge smile on his face, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. Let me just go around you real quick." And he went way out of his way to go around me. And I remember in that moment, right before that, I had felt my anxiety kind of like peak in that moment, worried about that. But then this guy smiled at me, swam around me, and it was honestly clear, like it was clear sailing from there. We got out in Lake, it was Lake Conroe in Texas, so it's a man-made lake, and so it was a fairly calm day. It was in the early, like low 60s in the weather. The water temperature was about 74 degrees, so it was perfect weather for that. A little bit warm actually. I did wear a wetsuit that day. I didn't train in wetsuits, but I decided to go for it just to have the extra buoyancy. And I remember getting out there and not having done a ton of time in the open water. I remember, doing my strokes, doing my sighting, and going as far. I could tell my watch I was actually going any distance, but I would look up and wonder if I'd moved at all at times because you're just out there and
Yeah.
there's no land for forever, and it was hard to tell if I was actually moving. The only way I could tell is just comparatively by the swimmers next to me. And we did a lap around the water, and I just remember getting towards the end and being surprised that it was already over because it honestly felt very easy for me in that moment. I'd been fortunate enough to find my rhythm with the swim that I wasn't worried about my breathing or my heart rate. It was all pretty good throughout there. So the swim, I ended up finishing the swim in 43 minutes. I know, Nick, that I got improvements to make there, so I need to talk to you about that. I still can see
No
improvements
sweat,
there.
man. That trust me, the fact that you got out of there and you had a great attitude and someone even smiled at you, that's a friggin' win, man.
Yeah, yeah. There were some guys too that they were fishing next to the swim because apparently where we were swimming, they were pushing all the fish towards this boat, and they were fishing and they were catching fish like coming into the boat. And I just remember thinking that was so ridiculous, and it just put me at ease. So I was lucky that whatever anxiety that I felt in the swim was immediately gone. And then we hopped on the bike. And the bike was also we was just it was perfect. I remember just having this profound sense of just gratitude. And that was the moment where, at least for me, when I'm racing, and no matter what I'm racing in a marathon or if it's a triathlon or even a 5K, that at some point in the race, I start my gratitude process, which I start to think about and send out, I guess, feelings into the universe or whatever it might be, the positive affirmations for the people and the things that got me to this point. So as soon as I hopped on the bike and I had my, didn't have the water to think about anymore and started riding, and we were riding through the Sam Houston National Forest, this just gorgeous forest, and it started to mist around us, and it was like lightly raining, and it wasn't bad like to think about. And I just remember just feeling so much joy and gratitude for Heather and my family, and honestly, even my job, my shitty job, for giving me the opportunity and the flexibility to go and pursue these things. And I just started to roll through the credits of the gratitude there. Because yes, while we talked about like that selfishness aspect before, I think there's also a way to manifest joy and gratitude in that process as well. And I spent all 56 miles just overwhelmed with gratitude of those around me. And I ended up finishing, it was the fastest ride I'd ever done. I finished the 56 miles in about 2 hours and 58 minutes. I was expecting to do it somewhere 3:15 to 3:30, but I totally blew away my own expectations for it. And honestly, my legs were feeling great too. I was rocking and rolling. Definitely a benefit being in Texas. It wasn't super hilly, so it was pretty flat. But I just remember, there were multiple times where, I'm not afraid to admit that I was crying at multiple points, and just feeling that just profound sense of love for those around me. And then we got to the run, and the run was not ideal in the sense that it was around a golf course. So we're in a golf course in Conroe, Texas, and they had this crazy loop to loop.
Oh my gosh. When I looked at the map of that, I was like, I don't even know how many turns there are. There's at least 50 turns.
There was a bunch. And at some points, like the sprint triathlon, you go this way. And so there were people directing us. And I think there were some people there, the volunteers were getting a little cranky at that point. They were ready to go home, and they were like, go that way. And so I started the run. And I did not follow your advice, Nick. I overcooked myself way too fast on the run because I was feeling it, and I was feeling it. And in a run like that, typically I'm somewhere between 8 and 9 minutes a mile, I think, is where I like to stay for a race day. And I remember I got through the first 5 or 6 miles. We had to run a couple laps through this crazy loop-to-loop thing. And I remember 5 or 6 miles feeling pretty good. And then all of a sudden the anvil hit my legs. And I think my time dropped from 9.5 minutes and then a 10-minute mile from there. And I was definitely moving a little bit slow. About mile 6 or 7, I remember coming around the bend, and we at this race, one of the good parts about it was that you would run around the people that were viewing the race. And Heather had been there throughout the day. My parents had actually shown up for the swim as well, so they had been there all day. And I remember coming around the bend, and I saw a bunch of little heads running towards the side where the running area was. And I realized that it was my nieces and nephews. My entire family showed up for the end of the run. I have 2 brothers. They have wives, and I have 7 nieces and nephews between them. And I thought they may or may not come. Towards that point, I thought maybe they weren't going to make it. And all of a sudden, all 7 of my nieces and nephews were there. My brothers were there. My parents were there. My girlfriend was there. They had signs. And it was just an overwhelming moment, especially for someone like me who's kind of like actively engaged in that gratitude exercise. Like that just sent me over the edge. Like
I bet.
I remember just wanting to go, trying to run around them as kind of quickly as I could so that I could just cry for a second before the next lap back around. And I just, and for those listening, I'm assuming some of you guys kind of know this feeling, but I even now I can't really accurately express that feeling of just filling your heart up. Your heart is full. And I know it seems so silly to say it in that way, because all I'm doing is just exercising, right? Like all I'm doing is just running a bike and, running. But in that moment, I have very few times in my life where my heart has ever just felt so full of just joy. And, you have that moment where you feel like you can just rip the sun out of the sky and put it in your pocket and put it in your body. And that's just how you feel. Like it feels like the sun is burning inside you.
Oh, man.
And that was it. And I sprinted across the finish line and finished in under my goal time. My goal time was 6 hours. I finished in 5 hours and 54 minutes and 32 seconds. And I remember crossing that finish line with a scream of just a cathartic scream. and asked where the nearest beer was.
Oh man, the picture that you sent me of you, just like this, the amount of stoke in your face for that. Oh man, I just felt it. It's like punched me. I was like, man, he is on fire right now. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably hilarious for the people watching it, especially because this guy's finishing 89th, right? Like it's like he's about to win the race because I
Yeah.
get that and I kind of do this big like let it out scream there in a moment, and it was like I'd won the race. I'm sure everybody thought it was ridiculous, but I for every race I've ever done, I always leave a little bit in the tank to absolutely sprint through the finish line. That is like no matter what, no matter how gassed I am, I always leave a little bit left in the tank for that, and I find that moment is just it's very cathartic.
Bobby, your story to me means a lot because in everything that I have to do and my friends and my pro athlete colleagues, it's always about, all of the opposites of that stuff about the tactics and how hard you can push and this guy did that. It's like so I guess it doesn't really matter. None of that stuff really matters. And everything you gave me after the race report and you told me about, that is what matters. I mean, how you've transformed yourself, how you took the challenge on, how you filled yourself up with all the emotions. You let yourself totally just bake and bask in the emotions of everything that you stand for. And there's been a few races where I've finished like and have really felt like that. Like I took a third place at an Ironman once, and like I was just bawling. I couldn't believe that I actually was able to have that. And I think for that same feeling, that's why I was like, man, Bobby felt that. And this was his first triathlon. Like how amazing, how cool the story that I want everyone else to hear because everybody's struggling with something, whether it is I don't want to get up today, or I had a hard day the other day, or I don't feel good about myself, or my partner, or financials, or loss. Like that is going around no matter what, who, how wealthy, how poor, that stuff's happening. And if you can just simplify and focus on like the legitimate aspects of what you kept yourself going with, even during the race, during some of the training events. I mean, you said it yourself, it wasn't easy, never was supposed to be. But the fact that you did it no matter what, against all odds, against a shitty job or whatever it is. Like
It,
it's not that
if
bad. I
my
know.
boss is listening, I love my job.
Yeah, I love your job. It allowed you to hire me. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, for
So
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I think that's why the second I heard this story from you, I was like, man, I need Bobby to tell my network about that, and our folks need to hear it. I'm going to link it into our podcast, our coaching group, our Real Tri Squad people. I want a lot of people to hear your message of your experience because not a lot of people have the conviction to even talk about it that way. So that's why you're here. And I really, really want to thank you for giving me that. I mean, because I got to race soon and I need to remember a lot of this shit.
Yeah, of course, Nick. Well, and it's a humbling sport, I think, and I think even your professionals, like you guys know that, and that in my mind, like there's never going to be a world ever where I'm going to find a podium. There's never going to be a day where I'm standing on top and I'm winning first place. But that's not the point
Hey,
of this. That's
never
not the
say never
point.
though, buddy.
Maybe if it's a race of one, I'll
I've
be
had
first.
I've had many athletes on the podium who never thought they'd be there. And I promise you, it just depends on who shows up, Bobby.
That's that's right. That's right. But the point that I want to make is that, if as a runner, like I'm never going to break Kipchoge's marathon record. Like that's never going to happen for me. Like no matter what, there's always going to be someone out there that humbles me, that is, better than me because it's not the point. The point is being a little bit better than what you were yesterday and just trying and showing up every day. And when you have a bad day, when I say to myself on a bad day, as I say, I'll try again tomorrow. Try again tomorrow. I'll give it my best shot tomorrow. Because and maybe some people can relate to this out there. I'm not sure, but also in the depths of those in the race day, like yes, like the gratitude is there, but I'm also thinking about those nights when I had, 12 empty beer cans in front of me and I had the sun coming up behind me and I hadn't slept and I wasn't going to sleep for a while. And you think about those moments also when you were your weakest and those days where, there is a universe out there, there's a time out there when those addictions ate me up and spat me out and I'm, dead somewhere. There's a world where that probably happened to me. And, you know, it's never a competition for me, at least. It's never a competition against anybody else out there on race day. We are all brothers and sisters on race day. It is a competition against who you were yesterday. People often ask me, what are you running from when you do these races? And I say, I'm just running from who I used to be.
Oh man.
And that's it. And honestly, I know my experience is, hopefully, hopefully people out there have some similar experiences to that. But, for you and the professionals out there, you guys are also, I have so much respect for what you do. You guys set the tone for the rest of us. I wouldn't do what I could if without your guidance, Nick, and without your experience and all that. And, the way that you guys pursue your own goals is also something so beautiful and unique, because there was also that, the tactics and all that. That's also fun too, to get into as well. So everybody's got their own way of making a joyful experience out of this. And I hope that, if someone's listening to this, maybe they find some shred of it, themselves.
Somebody will. I promise you, believe it or not, someone needed to hear, and I'm that someone too. We needed to hear this experience from someone who has, and the other thing is, like, the way you talk about it and the way you're able to articulate how you're going through these processes is just amazing. So you've got a public speaking future. If you ever transition into that aspect, you're going to just fill the stadiums, man. Because I was like, I got to hear more. I got to get this guy on. But this is about you, buddy. I appreciate it. And, whatever is next for you, if it's not triathlon, please let me know how it goes no matter what. Even if you do some ice climbing or something, like, I got to hear this. I got to do a podcast and hear about your experience, because I think the way you process makes sense. And then kind of relay that, it is really a good opportunity for us to get really authentic and to be open and super transparent with the things that we cover up. There's a story you tell everyone else, and then there's a story you tell yourself. And I feel like the stories you're telling are really in line. You live a very authentic life. And I think it was an honor to get you to this point. And so thank you so much for being a guest and for sharing this experience. It means a lot to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot to others.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. I have so much gratitude for you as well. I couldn't have done any of what I did out there without your help and support. You are a wonderful coach and a wonderful human just to spend time with. I know that's probably cheesy to speak about it in that way, but you inspire me. When I see the times that you guys have on your races, it boggles my mind. So, the dedication, the respect that you have for your body in the sport is something that I'm grateful to have encountered briefly.
Well, thanks, buddy. I think this is it's a good spot to end, buddy. And I hope you have a good rest of your night. And dude, we'll have you back next time you do something else cool, because I'm sure it's going to be mind altering.
Thank you, Nick. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.